Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, and I've got a really interesting dude with me today, I just want to take a quick moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to kind of start taking action on reclaiming your health and fitness and becoming better fathers and better men to join our online community. And the best way to do that is to head over to Facebook and apply to our private group, which is the Fit Dad Base Camp. That's facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Base Camp. So, my guest today, his name is Traver Boehm, and this guy has so many incredible stories. I could literally spend all day sorting through them all and talking to him. And so, he's an author, he's a TEDx speaker, he's a former MMA fighter and CrossFit gym owner. He holds a master's degree in Eastern medicine, and he is the founder of the Man Uncivilized Movement. Actually, the list could go on. So, yeah, he's done a lot of shit, and I can't wait to dig into this stuff. So, Traver, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's my pleasure.
You got it, man. So, I have a lot of stuff I want to ask you. You're
sure.
Just by looking you up, and we were introduced not too long ago, and I started doing a little research and watching some of your stuff, and you have been through more in your life than anybody I've ever met by far. The experiences that you've gone through, the self-reflection, just the self-growth and work you've done for yourself, it's inspiring. So, before we get into all of that, maybe just, sure thing, maybe just, share a little bit about your backstory, kind of where you came from and how you ended up here.
Ooh, sure. So, I started off, I think very similar to a lot of people listening and even yourself, following, maybe not the standard American track, but a lot of it. I graduated from college and just sit in an office. So I spent 5 years bodyguarding and then got sick of that. And on one of my last gigs was sitting there talking to my client who was a billionaire. And he asked, well, what are you going to do with yourself? And I was like, I really want to help affect people at the deepest level. And it hit me in that moment that I really wanted to work with people's health. So I quit that job and dove into grad school for Chinese medicine. And in grad school, a woman who later became my now ex-wife, but I left acupuncture school and professional fighting, which I was doing at the time, with a really deep curiosity about CrossFit and fitness. Because in my last year as an acupuncture student, I getting people coming in, asking me about their health, about weight loss, about mobility, about yada yada. And I went, man, I can't really help you with needles and herbs. What you need to do is start walking. What you need to do is figure out how to squat. What you need to do is stop eating McDonald's. And so I shifted right from acupuncture school into opening a gym and opening an acupuncture clinic and running that gym for a number of years, but then also getting the question of like, how do I affect people on an even deeper level? And so my gym in Santa Barbara was teaching meditation. We were doing challenges where people had to journal, where people had to look deep within their hearts and ask, like, what do you really want to get out of life? And like a lot of us who were in our 30s and 40s, my life shifted very drastically in 2016 when my ex-wife and I had we were pregnant for the first time and lost the pregnancy, which led to me very quickly getting divorced. There was, I think, we handled that situation poorly, the both of us, and then boom, she took off one day. And very shortly thereafter, let's call it the next morning, my business partnership also went on the rocks. So very quickly, I went from having it all, in quotes, living the American dream of married, house, dog, kid on the way, business I loved, to, oh shit, what am I going to do now? And even more importantly, who am I without that partnership, and who am I without this business that I've built and run? And so I was left with a number of questions, and they were the deepest, most important questions. And so I dove head first feet first, body first, soul first into answering those questions. And that took me on the wildest ride that, we'll get into it, but the wildest ride that I could never have imagined. Now, even in hindsight and waking up day to day, still can't believe is my current reality.
Wow. So, speaking from experience, I came out of an 8.5-year marriage, and what most men, I ended up working with single dads exclusively for quite a while when I started my business. And most men, right, they don't go on a journey of self-reflection. They ball up, right, and they hide and they find an outlet. For me, it was fast food. I just basically abused the shit out of my body. I ate McDonald's every day. I had like 5 or 6 sodas a day, drinking tons of Red Bulls. And obviously, what happened? I just felt like shit. But working with these dads, I saw it time and time again, is they go into this dark place, and it was very difficult for me to reach them. And so that's why it's so fascinating for me to hear your story, because you're not your typical guy that I would think, hey, he's going to go and do some deep meditation, or, you're like this bald-headed, bearded, fist fighting dude. You're not the type of guy that's going to, start looking inward at his emotions and his mental health. And, so that's why it's just so fascinating. And listening to you talk and listening to your stories, it's just blows me away. It's amazing. So I want to hear about this. You call it the Year to Live project in 2016, which is the year you basically worked on yourself nonstop, right?
Yeah. So, all of a sudden I was in a really unique position with my marriage ending and business partnership ending. And it created so much space. And if you think about that, imagine waking up tomorrow morning for anybody with a family and a job and having neither. And for a lot of people, like, oh, it must have been the greatest thing ever. It's pure freedom. And for me, it was pure terror, because that's too much space suddenly. It was like, well, what am I going to do with myself? Not only what am I going to do with myself in the long term, but what am I going to do with myself in the next 20 minutes? Right? I'm a type A guy. I need a bone to chew on. So what am I going to do? So I'll wrap this up really quickly, but I went to a meditation center in LA and walked out of their bathroom, and on a cork board of like community events paper that said the Year to Live group. And I went, oh, what the heck's that? And I went home and Googled it, and it was basically a 12-month program based off of Stephen Levine's book, A Year to Live. That this was a Buddhist center. It was to prepare them. Basically, the program was to prepare yourself for what would be your death at the end of a year. And the book is written for people who actually have a chronic illness or are having cancer or something where they know they're going to be passing. And I went, that's really, really interesting. I wonder if I could do that program. And then I realized it was LA based, and I would have to be in the same place for 12 months. And I didn't want to stay put. So a couple things happened, and I decided to literally use 2016 as a social experiment, because I was going to still get a paycheck because I'd sold my business and I had complete autonomy. So what would I do if I knew at the end of the year I would be passing away? And there's a caveat to that, because I had a pretty good feeling that I wasn't going to be. So how could I use this to do 2 things? The first was heal my life, heal my past, go all the way back to the beginning. Something really important for men to understand. Go all the way back to the earliest traumas of my life. The traumas of living in my family, the traumas of, getting broken up with at 14, trauma of having an abusive ex-girlfriend, all the way through the trauma of losing that pregnancy, getting divorced, and other things in my life. Boom. That was part 1 of what I wanted to do. Part 2 was, how could I set myself up for the next 40 years so that my life would be radically different in the second half than it was in the first? And to sum both of those up into one question, Steve, it was, how would I get to the end of that year, hypothetically, take my very last breath and have it be completely full? So I've closed every loop in my life. I've said the I love yous I need to say. I've said the I'm sorry's I need to say. I've asked people for forgiveness. I've gone on adventures. I've looked deep within myself and said, hey, I really want to experience this thing. I want to be of service in this way. I want to do X. I want to leave something behind. So I'll stand on a TEDx stage and speak. I'll do all of that and throw myself into every area of, so I mean, radically throw myself into workshops, men's groups, hiring an intimacy coach, talking with people, everything I could, so that on January 1st, I would be set up to live a radically different life. And I did it all in 12 months. It was the wildest adventure you could ever imagine.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, just thinking about that anybody would do that, I think most, myself included, especially our age, have a hard enough time doing one small thing that's out of their comfort zone, never mind living in a way that you can come out on the other side a completely different person. I'm sure the pain and growth and experience and everything else that you went through was something that has obviously changed your life forever, and how you look at the world, how you look at your relationships and yourself. I mean, obviously there's a lot of questions in there.
Sure.
So, I mean, where do we start with that? So it was the first thing you do? Because I know I want to hear your story about the time you spent in the jungle in the dark. Is that something you did in the beginning of that journey, or?
Yeah, so the order of it really, and the order of it was kind of, I'm not a religious person, but I sat down at the beginning of this and said, okay, this process will be completely out of my hands. I surrender to whatever is now taken, this force that has taken over my life and is pushing me to go a very different direction than the advice I was getting societally, which was, you own a gym, find a new girlfriend and get married. And, oh, you're selling your gym, go open another one 2 towns over and start over. So the advice I was getting was like, just replicate your life immediately. Solve the problem, check the box, solve the pain. And the feeling I was getting was, no. Allow something greater than you to come take over. So the very first thing I did was sit down with an ex-girlfriend from about a decade before and ask her, what was the hardest part about dating me? And just sat there and listened to the answer and went, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
This is everything I didn't want to hear and everything I needed to hear. And that duality was the entire year. So when you say, most men are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, I knew that for 12 months I would never be comfortable. And I had no idea the depths of that discomfort, but that was the duality, Steve. Like the two couldn't go, I couldn't have one without the other. So it had to be uncomfortable. The next thing I did was find another ex-girlfriend who I was kind of an asshole to, asked if we could have lunch and if I could apologize. I did, and asked her for forgiveness. And, my hand was shaking. It was terrifying. Mm-hmm. I went from there to volunteering in hospice and working with people who literally died in front of me for 3.5 months, and got an understanding of, wow, this is what real service is. This is what fucking matters. It doesn't matter how much I can deadlift. It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter how big my dick is. This is what matters. The fact that I can sit across another human and be completely present to whatever pain, joy, whatever their experience is at their most vulnerable hour, which is, for some of them, the day before they died. For other of them, I was with them for an entire year and they became part of the fabric of my being. But that was, some of this was also a study of, for whatever we call it, a study of death. Because I had just experienced the death of my marriage, the death of that pregnancy, my business partnership, the death of my life as I knew it. And so I played with and sat in and around death, which led me into that dark room in the jungle.
Wow, man.
It was heavy, right? It was heavy.
Very.
I tell people about this. They're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm okay. I'm not a sociopath. I'm not a psychopath. I don't know. This stuff seemed like the right shit to do at the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was watching one of your videos where you talked about one of your experiences in hospice with a particular gentleman. And I got choked up just listening to you describe the interaction. I mean, that is extremely tough. And, I feel strongly about what you said was none of that other bullshit matters. at the end of the day, our time is so short here, so short. I mean, I'm at 47. I'm halfway through at least. I mean, that scares the hell out of me. I mean, and I'm not living the way I should be. Like, you made yourself, and 90 some odd percent, I'm sure, of people living and people in the world are not going to make themselves do that. Probably high 90s, right? They're just not going to. They're in their quote unquote comfortable life. They're just not willing to take any risks. They don't want to face themselves in the mirror like you did, where you uncover all the ego, all the bullshit, all the other stuff, and then you're staring at yourself and like, this is the person that I am at my very core. We're not going to do that. And I think, it's something that I would love to do. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is, this is what you have been through. This is what you do with clients. And there's just nothing greater you can do for someone than help them do something like that for themselves.
Absolutely. Because when you walk out of, like, every moment of my day is now different than it was 3 years ago. Every moment. And it doesn't mean to say that there aren't hard moments. There are even harder moments, because now I've accepted the full spectrum of life, the absolute rawness of it. That there were days where I will lie in bed and cry uncontrollably. And there were days where I will literally sit on the couch and go, I cannot believe the ecstasy of my life. And we can talk about duality over and over and over. But if you want the far end of the pleasure, you've got to be willing to go to the far end of the pain. You cannot have one without the other. Period, fucking period. And so for people listening, it's how willing are you? Everyone wants the far end of the pleasure. But are you willing to go, man, I will let my heart break to the depths of its core? And only then can you experience what I believe is pleasure and joy and satisfaction on the level that we're all searching for on Instagram, on Facebook, with a new car, with a line of cocaine, with a hooker, right? That, especially men, we're going about it in the wrong ways. We're going about it in the external ways, because that is the masculine goes outward, the masculine goes upward, the feminine goes inward, and it goes downward. And so when we are willing to drop inward and go, oh, fuck, let me excavate this area. Wow, there's gems in here. But oftentimes they're buried in a foot of shit. It's that willingness to go, okay, bad things are happening to me, or I'm in pain. I'm not going to numb it. I'm not going to drink it. I'm not going to smoke it. I'm not going to fuck it away. I'm going to sit in it. Because I have this understanding that in this pain, there has to be, it's unequivocal, has to be a lesson or a gem or something positive that I can take out of it.
Yeah, and you're such a good example of somebody that, you're a masculine guy. You're a man's man, right? You hunt, you kill shit, you beat people up, you do all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah, but you're showing us that, it doesn't have to be one and the same. Like, when you think, oh, I'm a man's masculine guy, like crying is weakness. And I mean, I've heard that stuff a million times, but that's not it. I mean, it's being open, being vulnerable. I mean, those things are, I believe, where the real strength lies. So you can do both. Absolutely. I mean, you're a perfect example. I mean, you do both. Anybody watches one of your videos, one of your talks, you look the part, you talk the part, and then you open your mouth, and it's, you're speaking on a different level where you're like, holy shit, this guy is really getting deep. All the surface stuff is gone, and that's just so common. It's such bullshit. I mean, it's just everywhere, and that's why your message is so strong. I know you're helping tons of people with your movement and your coaching and everything else. So all this stuff. So you started with that, and then you end up, right? So after hospice, did you end up going out to, was it Guatemala? Is that right?
Yeah, I went to Guatemala to do the darkroom experience.
That sounds terrifying, to be honest, and I don't have the balls to do that personally. Yeah. So
it was terrifying. I just got chills. It's such a part of my being now. And to give people a understanding of what this is, there's something called a dark retreat. And in it, you are placed in complete and utter pitch black darkness for a period of time and isolation. And I chose to do that for an entire month. And people always ask me, Steve, like, well, your eyes adjusted in like in the second or third day, right? So like, no, it's pitch black the entire time. And people will say like, well, you could read, right? I always get the questions like, no, actually, we'll go back to what I just said. It's pitch black. So no, you couldn't read. Well, there was TV. No. There were no books. There was no lights. There was no internet. There was no music. There was nothing but my mind. And it was a colossal mind fuck. And yet one of the single greatest experiences that I've ever lived through, having lived through it. But it was also one of the single most awful experiences of my entire life.
No doubt. I mean, at any point, how long did it take before you said, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I'm going crazy. I'm literally going crazy.
It took about 8 days for me to break, put it that way. And I had made, and I know this sounds psychopathic, I had made the decision walking in there that I would not leave under circumstances. And I had a key on my side of the door. So this is like a little concrete hut that I was in Guatemala. And I could leave at any time. I could literally open the door and walk out at any time. And I chose going in saying, I want this to fuck me up, right? As an athlete or a fighter, I know that the harder workouts, the workouts I've crawled out of, or the fights where I've literally just gotten the shit beaten out of me, those are where I've learned the most. And so I took that same mindset into this experience. And for the first 8 days, was like, yeah, this is just kind of boring, right? Like I did a lot of push-ups, did a lot of squats, did a lot of sit-ups, meditated a bunch, and was like, this is normal day to day. And then on the 8th night, I had a dream of my ex-wife and what I believe would have been our son walking down a beach together holding hands. And that dream kicked off the next 20 days of no sleeping and violently sobbing and holes in the wall and seeing visions and literally going crazy multiple times and just living in hell. But having all of that hell sort out, right? If that makes sense. People ask like, well, would you just torture yourself? I was like, no, I had to deal with the depths. I had to deal with pain that was so deep I didn't even know where to begin to find it. And sitting there with no distraction whatsoever, and the magic, we'll call it, of the experience of you walk into that room and something's going to happen to you in addition to you being a part of it. And I believe that I got moved through a process in that room, which was vomiting literally and shitting out pain and trauma and everything that I'd had to experience and having to relive it to process it. And so, yeah, it was fucking hell. And I now know, because I've touched all of those painful places, where they are and what I needed to do to heal them. And that's the greatest gift of it. So it's not just like throw yourself down a flight of stairs
right.
for no
yeah,
no
of
point.
Course.
Right, there was a point to it.
So my first question is this, right? So,
sure.
I can't, and I'm not kidding, I can't sit in a dark room for 5 minutes, let alone 28 days. Like I can't unplug at all. And I think I'm not alone. I mean, I know I'm not alone because we're so overstimulated, right? It drives me insane. Like, I can't be without my phone. Like, if I take a hot bath, I can sit in the darkness and relax and just like ease my mind. I have to have my phone on. Like, I did float therapy where they put you in, you're floating in this salt water and it's pitch black. Yeah. And I freaked out within about 15 minutes and I got out and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle just the stillness. So, how challenging was it just to adapt to doing absolutely nothing with no stimulus? That sounds like hell on earth to me.
Yeah, if we talk about surrender happens in layers, right? So day one, I had to surrender to the fact that I don't have my phone or my email or my friends or my Instagram account for the next month. Day two, I have to surrender to the fact that I love to read and I write constantly as a process. If you're ever in my house, there's notes everywhere. I have notes on my phone. I write professionally. I can't write. Okay. Day three, I have to surrender to the fact that I can't eat when I want to eat. I can only eat when someone brings me food and slides it through the double-sided door. Oh, day four, and it's just this continual surrender. And so much of the year had already been surrendered to me, right? I'd said that I was open to whatever came into my life, and I was open to giving myself permission to be so far out of my comfort zone all the time that I had to surrender to the fact that I was completely out of control, meaning that in a positive way. I wasn't the one in control of my life. And so for you, I imagine that you would go through a similar process. You know, I recommend that if people want to do this, they do it for 3 days. I had training in meditation and whatever we want to call it, a constitution that allowed me to handle this. And the caveat to that is I did go crazy. I did think I was dead for a couple of days, and I did want to die a number of times. And that will break people, right? It broke me open, but that will actually kill people. Just like I had the constitution to have a 450-pound deadlift. However, if we take someone off the street and we say, hey, you've got to put a bar up with that much weight on it, it'll put their spines out their backs. So yeah, I had a constitution to handle it. But this is all an unlayering, like play with that term, where I bet you that after 2 days with no phone, you're actually okay. It's just getting through the first 2 days. 2 days with no TV, and you're actually okay. It's just getting through the first 2 days. And then it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So I get that it's terrifying, but it's terrifying in the context within which you live your current life. I'd lost a kid or a pregnancy. I'd lost my marriage. I'd lost this business that I had created, or I had chosen to give it to the partnership. So I was close to rock bottom as it was. I said, fuck it. What else do I have to lose? You know what? Actually, let's see what else there is to lose. Let's take my eyes. Let's take my cell phone. Let's take my friends. Let's take human touch. Let's take talking to people. Let's see what's at absolute depth of rock bottom. Because hopefully I never get here again. I don't ever want to lose a marriage and lose all that I'd lost and then go through the experiment. But while I was there, I was like, fuck it. Let's see what's underneath these next 2 layers. While you're down here, let's root around.
Mm-hmm. So tell me what it was like when you opened that door. Like, what happened? Something come over you?
Yeah, it was wild. So the last night, I didn't sleep, and I didn't really sleep much after the 8th day. But I remember hearing they would ring this little bell when it was time to eat. And I heard a woman, like, I could feel like footsteps, I could like feel stuff more than hear it. I was like, oh shit, I'm getting out. Rung a bell. I said, Traver, you made it. It's time to come out. And I heard her side of the door open. And then I went and said, I need 5 minutes. And I just sat there with myself and did like a closing ceremony self of saying, you made it, congratulations. Tried to integrate and process what the whole thing was. And then I opened that door, Steve, and this woman was there. She had dressed herself in a white gown, a headdress, and she looked like an angel. And I sat on the floor. I had a towel or a blanket wrapped around me and a beanie on, and just sat there, and all I wanted to do was touch her. And so she held my hands for about 5 minutes, and all I did was cry. And just cry, because I was out, I was touching a human, I could see light. I had this beautiful woman saying she was proud of me. I said back to her, I'm proud of myself. It was the culmination of so much hell. And it took me then, truthfully, about 3 hours to leave the room. So she went off to do something else, and I scooted back to the middle of the room with the door open and just sat there. And I didn't want to leave. And then I would like scoot to the front and then peer out and be like, holy all of a sudden the world was a really big place. It had just been my little hut for a month. And the next, people always ask, like, was the light hard to see? The light was fine for me, but I was super car sick at motion. So like leaves, this is in the jungle. So the wind would blow the leaves and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to fucking puke. And I'd have to cover my eyes because I hadn't seen motion in a month. And so the first day, people were like, what did you do? Did you go get a hamburger? Did you go? I was like, no, I wrapped a towel around my head and a pair of sunglasses, and I lay in a bed for 24 hours, like passing in and out, listening to Legends of the Fall on audio because I wanted someone else's input in my head rather than my own. And so I listened to that book on tape and slept with a towel. It was like super glorious, right? Like, oh my God, this grand awakening. Like, no, I visualized Brad Pitt and and then passed out a lot. But yeah, it took a long time to really integrate what had happened. You know, my next week was like, cool, hungry. Let's go get a hamburger. Let's get a cup of coffee. And then it wasn't until months later or weeks and months later that it started to wash over me and wash through me how different I was viewing the world and how different I was viewing humanity and how different I felt in my own body. And then when I wrote about it, it really started to reorganize myself too.
Wow. And so
it was a trip.
Yeah,
man.
what I like about it too is, you know, you weren't doing this to get more followers on social media or make more money, which is why people do that shit now, right? They do stupid shit, not that that's stupid, but they do crazy stuff that no one's going to do, but it's only for the purpose of trying to get more eyeballs and make money. And so there's no depth to that. And one of the many things I dislike about the world of online business, but yeah, so anyway, that's just phenomenal. And so you said something, I don't remember which video it was on, but you said that after your divorce and you had gone through all of this, you said that's either someone had told you that the pain from your divorce is never go away. And so instead of letting it have a hold on you, you have to best learn how to utilize it. I don't remember if that was something that you had come up with, but that's powerful stuff. I mean, there are a lot of single dads listening to this now and that are holding on to it 5-10 years later. They're still holding on to that pain and that anguish and the resentment and bitterness and all those negative emotions that are literally sucking them down and keeping them in place. But, you know, you've used that pain, and, you know, very few of us will go through the pain of a child like that. I mean, and you've used that pain to serve you instead of hold you back.
Yeah. The question I ask men especially, because we are not in the pain business, is what are you going to do with your pain? What are you going to do with this gift of pain you've been given? And that usually stops them right in their tracks. Because one, they got to accept it. You got to go, yep, this shitty thing happened to me. Damn it. And there's nothing I can do about it, but there's everything I can do with it. And that's when I get aggressive with people and go, what are you going to do with it? Okay, she left you. What are you going to do? She was fucking your best friend. What are you going to do? How are you going to use this high octane rocket fuel that you have been handed? That's either going to sit in your tank and eat you alive, or you get to channel however you want. You get to channel into living a completely different life, or taking the life you have and exponentiating it in every possible way. But it's that shift, Steve, that needs to happen first of, wow, wait a minute. I can use this. Not only I can use this, but I get to use this. And then it becomes, I have to use it. And I see men all over the place now doing extraordinary things that never would have before, when they stop running, stop hiding, stop numbing, and start answering the question of, what am I going to do with this gift of pain I've been given? And it was the greatest, one of the single greatest questions I got. One of the most impactful questions was just a week or two after my ex-wife walked out. And I talked to a guy who had gone on a business trip as a married man and come home to a completely empty apartment. And it happens. It happens more often than we talk about it. And he said, Traver, this is going to be the worst year of your life, or it's going to be the best year of your life. Either way, it's going to be the hardest. So you've got some decisions to make. I just got chills. And I sat on the couch going, holy shit, he's right. There's nothing I can do. There's absolutely nothing I can do to not make this the hardest year of my life. And I have the opportunity, if I choose to take it, to make this the best year of my life. And those two, I then put it was like this connection of, wow, Those two go hand in hand. Holy shit, pain is fuel. All I see now is an epidemic of hurt men who are channeling their pain into drugs, alcohol, sex, work, suicide, isolation, and not realizing that it's no different than any other fuel. That when you accept it and start to work with it and go, okay, I am so upset today. I am so heartbroken today. What am I going to do with it? Not about it, because you can't do shit about it. It's what you do with it. That's the differentiator. And that's when men become supermen. That's when we become heroes of our own lives. That's how I wrote a book. That's how I did a TED Talk. That's what I fueled that Year to Live project with. It's what I fueled this current movement I'm on with. It's what I give to my own men and say, hey, what are you going to do with that? And they sit. See, I can watch the hamster in the wheel, right? And the answers I get are phenomenal. I want to be the best dad I can to my kids. Doesn't matter. She has nothing to do with this anymore. I am going to be the healthiest, strongest, most present version of a human that I've ever imagined. I'm like, okay, brother, get to work. How are you going to do that? I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to hire a coach. I'm going to take this course. I'm going to read these books. I'm going to go to this workshop. You know what? I've actually always wanted other men or start a men's group. You know what? I really want to do guiding tours. I think I'll start leading that. You know what? I've always wanted to start fixing motorcycles. I did that in my 20s. I'm going to get back to that. Right? So these men then reclaim who they are. That's what pain does. It lets you open up some doors that you've had locked away. And when you can do that, life becomes an absolute ride. It becomes everything you always thought it would be, and it never was.
And the big question is, will they do it, right? I mean, yeah. And you wrote a book, right, specifically on this topic, right, called Today I Rise. I mean, you address this exact thing. I did.
Exactly. What are you going to do with your pain? It's specifically, I was in a bad place. The history of that book is I was just out of my divorce, just done with this Year to Live project. And my buddy asked me that question. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, what are you going to do? You're upset. You're depressed. What are you going to do with it? And I was off. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. He goes, what if you wrote 90 letters to the you that woke up on the morning your wife walked out? What would you want to hear? Because you've done something extraordinary with it. What would you write? And boom, for the next 6 weeks, I just typed and typed and typed and typed and typed. And the reaction I've gotten from that book was nothing I ever expected. From people buying it who have lost husbands and wives, to children, lost their jobs, to had chronic illness or terminal illness, have written me and said, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. I never wanted this thing to happen. But when you can survive the unthinkable, Steve, you become unstoppable, right? I give so much credit to people that woke up one day and, oh shit, I'm now flat on my back on rock bottom. Because those people, to me, they have street cred, right? You've got street cred. You've been divorced. You know what it's like to lose your family. You got some history to you now. You got some scars, right? I don't trust people who don't have scars. Or who have cuts that they won't let scar up because they keep drinking, smoking, fucking, working, whatever it is. Let it scar. And then get to work from this of being scarred.
Yeah, and it leads into a quote that I heard you say, pain is the greatest teacher none of us want to learn from, which is exactly right? We don't want to experience that. I mean, we have to go through it, like you said, we go through a divorce, we go through something heartbreaking. Yes, pain is inevitable. Mm-hmm. It's going to be there, but we want to mask it up, right? So like I said, we go drink, we go smoke, we go fuck anything that moves, right? And this is, temporary solutions, and it's not addressing issues. And as you've seen,
not at all.
Probably not a lot of people are really ready to take that head on, and you're changing that, which is obviously a fantastic thing.
Thank you. Yeah, and if it's something you can't take yourself, get some help. Right? I think one of the more heartbreaking aspects of being in the men's movement world and the men's world for me is seeing how men are suffering and they simply won't pick up the phone. And that's not to call me. That's to call anybody. That's to call a therapist. That's to call a coach. That's to call a friend. It's just to not say, hey, this thing happened to me, and now because I have a dick, I have to deal with it in isolation. I don't know where that rule came up with, but we need to change it. Because as soon as I do see men reach out, their lives change immediately, simply from the act of reaching out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if you're listening, you don't think like, God, I don't have the constitution. Get someone who does to guide you. Right? I didn't do all this alone. I want that to be perfectly clear. One, I had an extraordinary group of men in my life when my life fell apart. Some of the best friends you could ask for. Who were like, call us 24 hours a day. We're actually getting on a plane to come see you. And then throughout my journey, I just met extraordinary teachers and mentors and guides. Truly, this was not done in isolation by any means.
So what do you tell the person, and I'm sure you hear it a lot, that has an excuse for everything? Well, I don't have a close group of friends, or I don't have the money to hire a coach, or I don't have this. We're all full of shit. So where do you go from there? Because that's something that I, deal with as a coach constantly. It's one kind of excuse or another, and my job is to break through that. But what is something that you tell your clients to start throwing that at you when there's work to be done there?
The question comes back to, are you leading or are you being led? If you're leading, it doesn't matter what your story is. You find a way. The search is endless then. There's literally nothing stopping you from achieving the goal you want to achieve, except all of the times you're going to run into yourself and your own story. So I tell guys, you're being led by this story. This story has you by the hand and it's dragging you around. Until you stop and take that story by the hand, you're going to stay exactly where you are. And it's this simplicity, right? It's this brutal simplicity. If you want it, you can have it. If you don't, and you want to stay stuck in the story's bullshit. Right? One of the things I love to do in seminars is take everybody and say, write down the one thing, the next thing, the biggest thing that's standing in between you and the life that you want, or the thing that you want to do. And I have them write it down. I say, okay, don't put your name on it. Everybody take their sheet and pass it to people to the right. Okay, read the thing in front of you. How many of you could solve this problem in 30 seconds or less? And 9 out of 10 hands go up, or 90 out of, because maybe that's a big deal. Like I'm sick. You go, oh, wow. So it's not the thing that's holding you back. It's your relationship to the problem. Right? And people are like, oh, I really want to have a coaching business, but I'm afraid to shoot YouTube videos. Like, how many people right now would shoot a video right here if I held a phone up right now? 9 hands go up. Like, okay, so it's not YouTube videos, it's you. And it's your bullshit and your story. Whatever you've decided that's keeping you from doing this. Right? And I get, like, people say, oh, I can't take a year off and go travel the world. I have kids. Like, what can you do this weekend? What books are you reading? Tell me what online courses you're taking. Tell me what groups you're in. Yeah, exactly. You can start. You can start small. But there just needs to be constant action towards this goal or this dream. And there needs to be other people involved, right? Self-generating is hard. You know this from a fitness background. But if you have a group, if you have 4 guys in a gym, like, hey, we're all going to get after this workout together. Everybody will push 25% harder. Or if you say, hey, the 4 of us are going to meet 4 times a week to work out, then suddenly you stop sleeping in, even if you only got 2 hours of sleep the night before. So, how do we attack success? Is on 2 fronts, I believe. One, it's your outer systems. 2, it's your inner story. And for guys, if you write down all the reasons you're not getting what you want out of life, you're making a list of excuses that you could hand to someone else and they go, this is all bullshit. I could knock through this list in 20 minutes. Right? Do you remember the movie Fight Club? Do you remember when they take the guy out of like the 7-Eleven, they take his ID, and Tyler Durden puts a gun to the back of his head and says, like, if you're not enrolled in veterinary school in the next few hours, I'm going to come shoot you, or something to that effect. I tell guys, okay, so if I put a gun to the back of your head, could you not find a way to hire a coach? Could you not find a way to pay for this? Could you not find a way to buy that book? Could you not find a way to take that course?
Mm-hmm.
You could. I have borrowed money to work with consultants. I have gone into debt to hire coaches because I believed so much in the mission and what I was trying to accomplish. And those are some of the best investments I've ever made.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Exact same thing. Yep.
Right? And here you are leading. Now you're leading. Right? People are calling you for answers. And it's like, hey, just do what I did. Go all in. That's what's scary for guys. Because if we don't go all in and we fail, it's like, wasn't meant to be. Go all in and you fail, you're risking it. But when you go all in, you realize there is no failure. You just may have to pivot and go somewhere else. Say the willingness to go all in, just that willingness. It's no different than the willingness to make that first phone call for help. That it's an actual thing. It's like there's before the phone call and there's after the phone call. And you be the same if you reach out and call someone for help. Just like you won't be the same if you go all in and fail. At least you've gone all in. You're like, fuck it, I went all in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it's one of the reasons I only do work in groups now. Like you said, the power. I mean, you can't do this stuff alone. So everything I do is with a tribe of like-minded, and I work specifically with dads. So it's I mean, it's incredibly
Amen.
powerful. So let's do this, and this may be a little bit deeper.
Sure.
But I was thinking about this earlier as I was thinking about some of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and so when you start digging and starting peeling back the layers, when you're doing self-work, one thing that came to my mind, because this is an issue that I personally have, and I know I'm not alone, is what if you start peeling and realize you're not the man you think you are? What if you're not as good as you think you are, or you're not the leader you think you are, and you get down there, and there's a lot of obviously conversations that have happened over the course of your life that lead you to the deep belief of, I'm not good enough, or, whatever, I'm not worthy, whatever the conversation is playing in your head. But I think, and for me, that is something that scares me, is what if I go deep and I don't like what I find? Then what happens to me? You know what I mean? Like, I think about that, and it's scary. I mean, one of the reasons I have a bit of a wall and a bit of an ego, and I protect myself because I'm a child of a nasty divorce, and I have a lot of issues with self-worth because of bullying and a whole bunch of other shit. But yeah, so I'm doing what I can outside. I'm leading groups and helping dads. But yeah, deep down, there's that little voice, that's saying, you're still that little twerp, that was picked on in 8th grade, and it was just some very, very bad years of my life, many bad years. And so, yeah, I mean, I know I can't be the only one that has that conversation and is kind of scared to look there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I appreciate you asking it and sharing yourself so vulnerably there. It comes down, in my opinion, to two different facets. If you do a self-inventory and realize you're not the leader you want to be, you're not the man you want to be, then I'll quit Willink and say, good. Now you know from where to work. Just like stepping on the scale. You go, yeah, I think I'm around 185 pounds, and you step on the scale and you're 215. It's good. Now you know what you have to do. Right? A beautiful question I love to ask people, and I've been asked, is how can I simply show up more presently given what is true? Not to change what is true, but how can I show more presently given what is true? How can I show up and be more present now that I know that I'm not the leader that I want to be? What do I need to do educationally? What do I need to do practically? So one aspect of your question, Steve, is a skill set aspect. And if your skill set is lacking, get busy. Get educated, hire people, start working, run experiments, do things differently. Now, if we shift to the other side, which is self-worth, which is esteem, which is looking in the mirror and saying, God, I don't even deserve this. That's a bigger question. That's not a question. That's an inner question. And so one of the things I love to run a lack of self-worth through is it's twofold. Is it true? And if so, is it provable? So if you say, I'm not a good leader, I can't be, I got picked on when I was 5. Okay, is that true that you're not a good leader? If we did a unbiased empirical study on your leadership, would we come with a 30% out of 100? I don't think so. And we have to ask ourselves, is it true? Because we proved one way or the other. So it helps on the stuff that's super subjective to get objective. And to answer your question more specifically, that's really deep inner work that needs to be done with a professional. We need to go back to those times and have you express that pain. You need to, and this may sound crazy, you need to cry the tears that the child whose parents left never got to cry. And I've seen this work with men. It's the deepest of men's work. It's done in very sacred containers of only men. And everybody's in it together. And someone goes in the middle of the room and you're like, get the fuck after it. And that dude breaks down and weeps and sobs and releases that pain that's inside of him that he's been holding for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And then you see the change in his body and you see the change in his life. But that's more sophisticated work than writing a mantra or making a positive post-it note or whatever it is, even though the mantras and the post-it notes work too. So you keep diving into is that true? Did my parents get divorced because I'm not worth staying for? Is that true? Is that provable? Or is that a story I'm telling myself? And if it's a story I'm telling myself, what's a different story? Right? I had a guy call me and say, I need to, and a friend of mine, so I'm allowed to talk about this. He said, I need to work through the fact that when my wife left 15 years ago, she stole my identity and she stole my happiness. I went, oh, wow, beautiful. I love the language you used. So she broke into your house with a gun, found the box of happiness and identity, and she left with that, did she? And he went, no, I wasn't happy after she left and I didn't know who I was. Like, okay, so did she take those things from you? Or did she leave you and hurt you and leave you in a place where you are responsible for questioning those things? And over the course of a couple of weeks, we had him rewrite that story. And it may sound crazy. We had him draw pictures, had him do stuff to really solidify that, wait a minute. She was a 23-year-old idiot. She left because of her own reasons that had nothing to do with him. What she did was expose weaknesses or deficiencies in his own self-esteem and just brought them to light. Then, 6 weeks of work of doing this, and his life is radically different. He's actually run into her a few times and says now it's no big deal at all. It completely cleared him. So yeah, story, man. Like, I love stories, Steve. I absolutely love it because everything, not say everything, that's a big term. So much of our lives are the reflection of the stories we believe. And yet we have the ability to go back and rewrite the story. Because we all know that, I guarantee you know this to be true, even if you haven't heard this sentence, the future rewrites the past, doesn't it? Like, you get a bit of information and you go, oh, wow, for 10 years I've thought that you left me because of that. It had nothing to do with that. Holy smokes. You left me because you fell in love with a dentist. You've always wanted to be with a dentist. Wow, I get to go rewrite that whole story. Holy smokes. So yeah, that's so much of the work to do for men. And here's the challenge, brother. We don't do this inner work. We watch football, and I love football. But that's how we come home and we don't dive inward, so many of them. And it's okay to check out. It's okay to go, you know what, I've had a shit week. I've had my wife yelling at me, kids yelling at me, boss yelling at me, my knee hurts. I need 2 hours of just checking out. But if you want to make progress, if you want to clear your life and you want to live in a different capacity, no different than, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. You got to go to the gym. You got to put the reps in. You got to put the time in. You got to learn. You got to know how to use proper form. You got to nutrition. So it's no different than these inner stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, talking about that, it's so powerful for, for people listening that think that men they feel like it's their duty to come home and be the quote unquote man, right? And you check out. Like there's, this whole scenario of what we're supposed to do as men, and it doesn't involve hiring a coach and spilling your guts and crying your eyes out, right? They don't want to do that, and so, it's just so powerful when you start actually digging into it a little bit. And if we can just break down that wall, and yeah, it's just really deep stuff. Got me thinking about a couple of different things here as we're talking, but I wanted to mention one thing here too, and I do want to be mindful of your time here. But so you mentioned you had a friend that I guess her husband walked out on her and of a mess and didn't know what to do, and you sent her a message every day with some kind of positive note and then some kind of small action step. And I just want to, before I hear your story, I want to just relate that, because when I heard you say that, that's exactly how my life turned around after I split up my life. I went into a dark place. I abused myself, with food basically, and I cried myself to sleep. I watched sad movies. I watched the movie Seven Pounds over and over because it got me. And I'm just every night I'm watching, I'm crying, I'm going to bed, I'm missing my kids. And so, I met up with an old friend. She was actually a coworker, and we met up one night. And she looked at me and she's like, "Dude, you are a fucking sad sack of shit." She said, "Your kids need a better dad. They deserve a better dad." She's like, "Honestly, I don't want to be around you because you're so negative. Like, you're sucking the life out of me just by sitting next to you." And I'm out of the understand, when you're in it, you don't know it. And she said, "You need to get your shit together." And she told me this story about how a close friend of hers who was exactly my age, he had 2 kids, 2 daughters my ages, and he found the love of his life finally after 2 failed marriages. He found the love of his life, was diagnosed with, I think it was kidney cancer, and died. And I was like, holy shit. And she was very close with him. And, his kids, were left with, their birth mother. And it was just so sad and tragic. And she said, "You never know, man. You get your shit together." And I was the catalyst. And then every day she would text me, "Hey, did you reach out to your friend John and set a time to go see him and go hang out? Because you're just sitting at home and crying every night. Like, you need to get the hell out of your house." And so those little things, I said, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." And then weeks turned into months, and my life started to get better. I started to eat better. I started to go back to the gym. Then I adopted a paleo diet, and then I started really going to the gym, and then I started looking better. I started feeling better. And then I met up with her 6 months later, and she said, "Holy shit, you're not an even person. Never mind physically. Like, you're just a different guy." And it all started from that little thing of, that little drip there, that little note. "Hey, you can do this. Hey, just a reminder, out there." And so that's what made me think of that when you did this with your friend. And it sounds like it had a big impact on her as well.
100%. She's actually back together with her husband, and credits the process of us talking to each other every day as how she stayed sane through it. And I just ran her through the process of my book, right? Which was, what are you going to do today? I would ask her that all the time. What do you do today? What are you going to do with this pain? And she started running marathons. She dove into more. She started taking courses. She grew so much as a person that even today, she says, that was one of the best periods of my life, even though it was like nightly crying. But it was just that little nudge, right? And we all need that, especially men. We are masters at isolating ourselves. We're masters at being like, I'm fine. It's one of my favorite words. Like, oh, really? Cool. Have a seat. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. It's like international code for I'm a fucking mess and I don't want to admit it. Right? So that the accountability, the community. We used to be communal creatures. And if guys, like, remember back when you were 12, 13, you had a group of buddies. And it's just hard when you're in your 30s and 40s because we don't make the time, we don't make the space, and we've been taught that it has to be family-centric. And what we haven't been taught is that if we don't have the energy to bring that family, then we won't lead. If we're exhausted, down, and unhappy, then that's how we're inspiring our families. And so we need to actually leave the nest, go commune with a group of men, bitch, get our energy out, get supported, get called forth so that we stay on a path, and then we come back to the family. Holy smokes. Like, oh my God, he's the leader again. He's back to being in charge. He's back to being inspired. So yeah, it's so important just to get these little nudges. It doesn't have to be a slate clearing year to live. It could just be one little thing a day, one attitude change. One just starts with 5 minutes of meditation, right? Every day, 5 minutes of meditation every day will change your life. Just like 5 minutes of squats will if you're not doing them, right? 5 minutes, bam.
Well, 5 minutes for me is a little much. Maybe I'll start with 30 seconds of meditation. That's an eternity. I can't do that. Come on. You know.
Oh man, I know.
So you're doing some just amazing work, and to be honest, I've never served people in a way that you're serving them. And as we're talking, I started thinking of the movie. I just saw it again, The Green Mile. You've seen it? Guys like you remind me of John Coffey. You're giving a little piece of yourself every time you get on a call, every time you're with somebody, because it's not just, hey, go Bucks. It's extremely emotionally draining. And I've had clients in the past where you have 2 or 3 in a row and you're dead. Like, I feel dead because you've given so much of yourself. And that's a remarkable skill. And, it's just amazing stuff that you're doing. And it's
thank you. It's an honor. I mean that. Last week I had within the I love the way the universe works. I had a woman who bought one of my shirts send me a picture of herself with no bra and no underwear wearing one of my Uncivilized shirts. And I thought, I've made it. Yep. This business is awesome. This is why I started this whole thing, even though it's a movement. And 2 hours later, I was on the phone with a cop who said, I heard you on a podcast 6 months ago, and on that podcast you said, if anybody out here is in trouble and doesn't know who else to talk to, they can call you. So I'm calling you. I'm in trouble. And I went, oh, fuck.
Yep.
This is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yep. Yeah.
This is why. I just got chills again. And in that moment went, okay, it's back to service. How do I serve? How may I serve? How can I serve? What an honor is it to serve? So thank you for the recognition. And I give it back to you. You don't know how many men and how many families are healthy and happy and together because of the work that you've done. You'll never know, Steve. You'll never know who just listened, that you never even bothered to email you or text you or anything, but changed their diet, changed their life, and now their kids are healthy, now their kids are happy, now they're alive. Mm-hmm. You just never know. So I honor you as well.
So let me ask you,
yeah, man.
I'll post some links to some of your talks, some of the ones that I've watched that I feel will be particularly impactful, but
sure.
Where would you like people to find more about what you do?
Beautiful questions. I just launched the Man Uncivilized website, just as it sounds, Man Uncivilized.com. And I do a lot of writing and blogging on there. And pretty much my only social media outlet is Instagram. And that's at Boehm, Traver Boehm. I will probably switch it to Man Uncivilized at some point. But those are the 2 places that I'm most easily accessible. You can message me on Instagram anytime if you have questions, if you have concerns, or if you're curious. But I've done a bulk of writing for that website, and I really want that to be the inspiration where guys can go to and go, oh wow, there's a whole different way that I can live. Holy shit, this is what masculinity is. This is what it means to be a man. This is how I take what's innate and powerful and strong in me and celebrate that, and how I combine this deep sense of consciousness, of space holding, of peace, of what the world really needs, because we're seeing so much of the uninspired and unactualized males in the news. So those 2 places, Instagram.
And for guys listening, I did spend some time on write and reading through some of posts you're writing, and this is not the typical, life hack, 8 ways to, make your day more productive. This is some very personal, deep, heavy shit, which, if you're going through anything that we talked about in this conversation, it's going to hit you right between the eyes. And that's, I believe, what you need to start thinking and then making changes versus, what you usually find out there is, hacks and tips and all that stuff. So no, thank you for creating this resource and writing the way you write. Yeah, this has been awesome, man. I've learned a lot. I'm actually thinking about a lot, and go upstairs now and turn the light off and sit for 30 seconds, and I'll let you know how it goes. So new movement, 30secondsinthedark.com. There you go.
I appreciate your time, man.
All right, man. Cool. Well, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Definitely. I appreciate your time and your audience's time as well.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.